I did my best to stay quiet, or I'd have no explanations if someone was woken up. I bit my teeth as I wrapped my arms firmly around his waist, leaning on him to stand. It was the first time I had ever touched a man this intimately, and I didn't care that I was pressing my breasts against him as I kept inching upward to his chiseled abs. Even then, my mind could almost be blank. Nonetheless, Dean kept me on my feet and walked over to the gazebo beside the hot springs. When he helped me sit down, I tried to push him away forcefully again, but the chain of orgasms had long since left me exhausted. That was when we heard the faint moans from a nearby tent, and I was left burying my face in my palms. This was bad. I had just barely calmed down, but Debbie from accounting and her husband had to do that now? Dean looked at me once and pulled me to hide in the nearby bushes, and we did our best not to make a sound. Under the stars' glow, I could see the silhouette of Debbie and her husband arriving where I had just sat, and they went straight to business. I felt a chain around me, binding me and threatening to rip me apart, as we watched Debbie's husband thrusting deep into her from behind her, while Debbie clasped a palm over her own mouth to stifle her moans. My body, which had barely calmed down, reacted violently, especially with his scent, which by now was burned into my mind. No, this wouldn't do. I begged Debbie and her husband to be quick, but as it turned out, they had plenty of stamina. Even as I felt Dean's body warmth seemingly unfurling away from him, I orgasmed again for no reason, and I was whimpering before I knew it. Suddenly, I felt his arm around me, clamping my mouth. MMPH. I gasped as he almost pulled me into his arms. His heartbeat and his pectoral muscles were all igniting my libido. Shush. He hissed to keep me quiet nonetheless. Even as I nodded feebly, I started trembling in his arms. He could see my distracted gaze under the moonlight, and remembering my wet panties that he had glimpsed earlier, he soon understood. I tried to free myself from his arms, but I also had to restrain myself in case Debbie and her husband noticed. And while I did, I orgasmed repeatedly, the stimulation almost making me pass out. There was no telling how long had passed when Debbie and her husband from finance were finally satisfied and returned to their tent. Dean lifted his palm off my mouth too, and I was gasping for air as he did. But while I should have distanced myself, he was suddenly all I could think about. I was reluctant and powerless to leave him. Ruth Singer, are you wet? I leaped away from his embrace when I heard that, only to inadvertently brush against the bulge between his legs. I didn't even need to feel it to notice that astonishing girth. Flustered, I denied it nonetheless. I am not. Dean frowned, and without another word, he reached under my skirt. Really, he rasped, trailing off and stimulating me all the more. As his coarse fingers brushed against my skin, it seemed to set me on fire, and I tried to squeeze my legs together, only for him to pry them apart. I felt like I was struck by thunder as he gently brushed his finger against the fringes of my panties, as all my senses kicked into overdrive. It tickled here, there, everywhere, especially there. I pushed against him, but I also desired him as my fingers clenched on his shirt. Ah, Dean, I moaned, not recognizing my own voice. The little devil and the little angel on each of my shoulders were waging war, as I wanted him to penetrate me deeply, but I ironically tried to push him away too. Everything was already driving me crazy when Dean abruptly slid under my panties.